Cogdill, Corbett, Correa, Cox, Denham, DeSaulnier, Ducheney, Dutton, Flores, Hancock, Harmon, Hollingsworth, Huff, Kehoe, Leno, Liu, Lowenthal, Maldonado, Negrete McLeod, Oropesa, Padilla, Pavley, Price, Romero, Runner, Semidian, Steinberg, Strickland, Walters, Wiggins, Wolk, Wright, Weiland, Yee. Mr. President,
okay. Members, a quorum is present. Would the members and guests beyond the rail in the gallery please rise? We are going to be led in prayer this morning or this afternoon by our chaplain, Rabbi Mona Alfie, after which please remain standing, and which will be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Senator Correa.
Thank you. Good afternoon. This September 9th will mark the 160th anniversary of California becoming a state. But long before we joined the Union, this land attracted dreamers and explorers, people who strove to make real their visions of a better future. In the book of Proverbs, we are taught, where there is no vision, the people perish. Throughout the last 160 years, our state has been a beacon of hope and opportunity because we have been blessed with men and women whose energy, passion, and imagination has kept us on the frontier and the cutting edge of not only what is possible, but also what was thought to be inconceivable to many until we made it so. The full verse from Proverbs teaches, where there is no vision, the people perish, but happy is he who keeps the law. Vision and lawmaking should go hand in hand. A people depend on their lawgivers to be inspired by the well-being of us all, and we depend on your ability to see a future that encourages possibility and opportunity. May the Creator of us all grant us the ability to act with vision and insight. May we find inspiration from within as we work to create a just society for us all. May this be God's will. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Members, without objection, AB 1085, file item 301, will be removed from the special consent calendar, and also pursuant to Senate Rule 29.10, the following bill, file item 62, AB 1455, will be referred back to the Senate Rules Committee. Members, we're on privileges of the floor. With any member, Senator Weiland, recognized at Senator Steinberg's desk.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I rise to make a presentation to Mr. Gregory Lucier, who is President. He's the CEO and Chairman of Life Technologies Corporation, which is celebrating its first year of consolidation with another life sciences company from Northern California. And I'd like to just read briefly a few of the elements that will appear in the resolution, because they're really quite significant. Life Technologies first employs about 3,000 Californians, and they are employed in making specific products that are absolutely crucial to the research in the biotechnology field to create and do research in new products, which not only will benefit all of us, but which will employ Californians in doing so. Life Technologies was selected as a new member of the Dow Jones Sustainability World Index and named leader of the biotechnology sector, ranking it in the top 10% of the world's 2,500 largest companies in terms of sustainability for performance in government, labor practices, talent development, community involvement, workplace safety, climate change, and environmental management. And that list is completely accurate. This is a very forward-thinking company. Just this morning, I've been discussing with Greg the commitment that Life Technologies has towards furthering science education, which we all recognize is key to the future of this state and this country. And this state, being the resident of so many high technology companies, is the natural state in which to do that. Going along with that practice, Life Technologies Foundation has donated millions of dollars to empower children today to become tomorrow's scientific leaders. And I could go on with their role as good stewards in the corporate community. I'd like to present Greg now with the Senate resolution which describes all of these achievements.
Senator Harman, you're recognized at your desk.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the request of the author, I'd like to have removed from the inactive file and returned to the regular file AB 1059, that's item A10, and AB 1233, that's item A24.
Without objection.
Thank you.
Senator Negrete McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the request of the author, please move AB 583 Hayashi, file item 198 to the inactive. Thank you.
Without objection. Senator Alquist, you're recognized at your desk.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise for two reasons. The first is to introduce career technical student organizations. We have some special guests, and they're right up here above me in the gallery representing several career technical student leadership organizations from all over California. These high school groups provide leadership experiences and skills development that help prepare students to compete and succeed in the new economy. Although career tech programs have suffered a troubling decline in recent years, a trend that this body is committed to turning around, I am proud to report that several of these California-based student organizations led recent national and international competitions, and others excelled in state competitions. Here today are students and teachers, advisors from DECA, FFA, and FHA Hero, Calhosa Health Careers, FBLA Business, and Skills USA Industrial Tech. They should be an inspiration to all of us in our effort to invigorate relevant curriculum in our high schools that prepare our young people to succeed in life. Please join in welcoming them to the Senate today. That's the first point. And the second point, I'd like to take a moment, and first of all, colleagues, members, I would like to thank you because many of you have held my hand and gone through some very difficult times with me, and I appreciate that and love you for it. And so, at a time in my life when I have found the man I love and will spend the rest of my life with, I would like to introduce you to my fiancé, Duncan Bennis.
So happy for you, Elaine. Very good.
Senator Pavley, you're recognized at your desk.
Yes, this relates to item number 82, Senate Bill 520. I'd like to request to be sent back to the Assembly for amendments.
Without objection. Thank you, Senator Pavley. Senator Wright is recognized. Senator Desaulniers, and then we'll get to Senator Wright and Senator Ashburn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to move AB 1422, file item 144, to the inactive file at the request of the author, Speaker Bass. And I would also, under motions and resolutions, like to remove item number 300, AB 669, at the request of the author from the special consent calendar, and the author is Assemblymember Fong. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Desaulniers. Without objection. Senator Wright is recognized at Senator Steinberg's desk.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I'm honored today to bring some constituents from my district. Some of you may have seen one of the young ladies. She was 15. She flew a Cessna 172 from Compton Airport in my district to Virginia, becoming a Guinness Book record holder for being one of the youngest persons to make such a flight. She actually lives in Inglewood, but she learned how to fly in Compton. She's doing exceptionally well in school, where she hopes to become a surgeon with a pilot's license. I was happy today that we were actually able to have her sit in the second seat of a King Air, and she reminded me that the pilot could sign her logbook so she could get credit for the time. Please welcome, and again, you may have seen her and you may not, but my constituent, Kimberly Anyandike.
How are you, man?
Not to be outdone, Kimberly's older sister, Kelly, last year flew 4 fixed-wing aircraft on the same day, which also qualified her for a place in the Guinness Book. So with us today, also a pilot, is 16-year-old Kelly Anyandike. Now, when they took that flight across country, some of you are old enough to actually have remembered, but most of you, I hope, have read about the Tuskegee Airmen. The program in Compton, to tomorrow's Aeronautical Museum, is kind of sponsored and has been adopted by the Tuskegee Airmen at the Compton Airport. But Mr. Levi Thornhill said if a young lady is going to fly across country, as an old Tuskegee Airman who served during World War II, some of you may remember that the Tuskegee Airmen, as they were escorting bombers during World War II, never lost an airplane to enemy fire. So on the flight with them and on the flight this morning is a Tuskegee Airman and a great old guy. Please welcome Mr. Levi Thornhill. Clearly, nothing happens with young folk without someone guiding and making that work. The tomorrow's Aeronautical Museum is a program at Compton Airport where young people are able to go, and they've had a number of Guinness Book record holders. You may remember a couple of years ago, a young man flew from Compton to Canada in a single-engine aircraft. Well, that program is run by a gentleman named Robin Petgrave. And Robin trains young people of all ages and races in the idea of becoming pilots and kind of dispelling that myth that it's something really complicated. So we've had young people fly helicopters, we've had young people fly fixed-wing aircraft, but it's all a part of that program at Compton Airport. I'd like to recognize the director of the program, Mr. Robin Petgrave. And last but certainly not least, and all of the women here in the chamber will know this, is that when you see young people doing well, there's usually somebody's mother that makes it happen. I mean, everyone in here has probably had at least a forest or two destroyed, making sure that they stayed on the straight and narrow. I'd be remiss today if I didn't recognize Mrs. Anyandike, who came with her daughters. And I just wanted to say thank you for what she does and being a role model in the community of Inglewood. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Wright, and thank you for your guests today as well. Senator Cedillo, you're recognized at your desk.
Yes, on these privileges, two items. One, I want to send well wishes to a very prominent leader in the healthcare industry, founder and chair of the UCLA Policy for Public Health, Center for Public Health, E. Richard Brown, took ill during the break. Ironically, it just published an opinion piece in the Los Angeles Times about the importance of healthcare reform, and I think all of us should send us his well wishes and hope for a quick, speedy recovery for him. And then on a lighter note, one of our top writers in Los Angeles, actually a son of Sacramento but lives in Los Angeles, winner of the LA Drama Critics Award 2 years ago for his work on water and power. Richard Montoya, the ever youthful, hilarious, critical, witty, satirist, and author, is celebrating his 50th birthday today, if you could believe that, for this young man. And so we should all wish him a happy birthday, feliz cumpleaños, let out the mariachis and the whole bit. For Richard, happy birthday to you.
Thank you, Senator Cedillo. Members, any other items to come before the Senate? Senator Ashburn is at Senator Steinberg's desk.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to ask Jake Henshaw and his wife, Pat, to come forward. The Senator's a very familiar face to all of us in the state capitol, a member of the Distinguished Press Corps, writing for Gannett News Services for so many years, someone that I've come to know and respect and appreciate. And with all of the changes in the news business, come forward, please. Pat and Jake Henshaw, all the changes in the news business, Jake is no longer going to be writing for Gannett, although I'm sure he has many, many endeavors and a lot of beautiful and very instructive words yet to write in his career. But it seemed to me absolutely appropriate and fitting that we would thank Jake Henshaw for the extraordinary work in the state capitol for all these years. Prior to working here as with Gannett in the Capitol News Service, he was in Washington, D.C., covering national events and the president. He was born in Tennessee. I hear that there was a log cabin involved, but I'm not quite sure about that one. But I know that he's covered all of us at one time or another, written the things I've written about us, some of them accurately, but also always has been a great joy and a pleasure to work with. Very, very accurate, very fine person. We wish all the best to Jake and to Pat on your retirement. Jake Henshaw. No one has actually done a count of the number of words that Jake produced and had published in newspapers across the state, but it seemed to me only fair that we would write a whole bunch of words about him. And I can assure him that the accuracy of that which is in this resolution is similar to the news reports that you would write.
Thank you, Senator Ashburn, and thank you, Jake, for your service. Senator Dutton, you're recognized at your desk.
Yeah, Mr. President, at the author's request, I'd like to remove file item 301, which is AB 1085, from the special consent file for the purpose of amendments.
Okay. Without objection, and some of those have already been taken off.
Then I'd also like to speak on condition of the file when it's appropriate.
That would be that. You may do so now,
Okay.
Senator Dutton.
I rise today to speak on condition of the file. Over the next couple of weeks, this body will be considering hundreds of bills as we close out the 2009 session. Instead of passing legislation that kills even more jobs, I believe that we must enact meaningful regulation reform and bring jobs not only that are currently here, help to make sure they stay here, but also bring jobs back to the state of California. There are unelected bodies of bureaucrats that are doing just the opposite, and I believe they must be stopped. The California Energy Commission is proposing a new regulation that will ban the sale of certain types of televisions in California. If approved by the Commission, this sales ban will cost California 4,600 jobs and cost the state $50 million in annual tax revenues. At a time when unemployment is at historic levels in my district and throughout the state, we can ill afford to impose any regulation that will cost even one job, let alone 4,600 good-paying California jobs. What makes this situation even more troubling is that the Commission intends to impose this new sweeping regulation without even seeking the approval of the legislature. This is just another addition to the many unneeded and unnecessary mandates that are killing jobs and driving them to other states. More are on the way, I can promise you. At a time when we can least afford to put more hardworking Californians in the unemployment line, I would call on the legislature to immediately impose a moratorium on these proposals and any other new regulations that will kill or deter job retention here in California. And I ask this body to please do what is the responsible thing to do for the state and for the people of California. Let's stop this nightmare and this madness right now.
Thank you, Senator Dutton. Members, any other? Senator Lowenthal is recognized at his desk.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to request that Senate Bill 251, it's the committee bill on transportation, file item number 84, be sent back to the Assembly for further action.
Without objection. Thank you, Senator Lowenthal. Senator Anastat, you're recognized at your desk.
First, on behalf of Senator Steinberg, I'd like to acknowledge two people with us at the desk today. The first is Matthew Brady, the Journal Clerk of the Nevada State Assembly, who is visiting us in an exchange program sponsored by the NCSL, and the Jordan Brownlow, who is an intern with the Rules Committee. Will Jordan stand up? And Matthew. Thank you.
Senator Padilla, you're recognized at your desk.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, there's three adjournment tributes I'd like to request today. The first for someone who was very active in my district, but technically a constituent of Senator Runner, that being Mr. Rudy Ortega Sr., better known in the community as Chief Little Bear of the Fernandino Tatavian Band of Mission Indians, who passed away recently at the age of 82. He was born in 1926 and raised in the San Fernando Valley, served in the U.S. Army during World War II, came home after the war, after his service, and worked as a riveter for Lockheed before moving into a career as a postal clerk. He, in the 1950s, was appointed leader of the band and took on the name Chief Little Bear in the 1970s. This is working on behalf of the first inhabitants of many of the native peoples of the San Fernando Valley and Santa Clarita valleys. While not officially recognized by the federal government, or at least not yet, The tribe has adopted a more formal structure under Chief Little Bear's tenure, and in 2002 adopted a recognized constitution. He's survived by his wife, 10 children, 49 grandchildren, and 54 great-grandchildren. And he contributed tremendously to the history and the culture and the recognition of the natives of the San Fernando Valley and beyond. In addition, I'd like to ask the Senate to adjourn in memory of Ernestina Durazo, a constituent of Senator Dean Flores of Fresno, mother of Maria Elena Durazo. Many of us from the greater Los Angeles area are very familiar with Maria Elena and her lifelong advocacy on behalf of the labor movement and all working men and women, not just in Los Angeles County. She lost her mother just last week to complications due to diabetes. Services will be this week. And last but certainly not least, constituent of Senator Hollingsworth, resident of Temecula, Ms. Tina Gallardo, mother of Alex Gallardo Rooker, who many of us know, who works here and advocates on behalf of the communications workers of America, very active in the labor movement and within the California Democratic Party. I share this because in all these instances, those who have passed were certainly influenced by those who raised them. Ms. Tina Gallardo was a resident of Temecula, but contributed to democracy in this state, certainly through the activism of her daughter and others. They have left their footprint on California history, California politics. I ask that we adjourn in memory of all three. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Padilla. Senator Steinberg, you're recognized at your desk.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I want to turn the mic over to Senator Fran Pavley in a moment, because she is the senator that represents two of the children of Eunice Kennedy Shriver, who passed away last week. And I wanted to just say very briefly on behalf of the entire Senate that we send our deepest condolences to the First Lady of California, Maria Shriver, as well as Governor Schwarzenegger, for this profound loss. And we hope that they are comforted by the national outpouring of love and support and recognition of the life that Eunice Kennedy Shriver had, and what she did for literally millions of people whose plight was not recognized and who were too often held back because of their disabilities. Ms. Shriver certainly took the word dis out of the word disability. And for that, I turn it over to Senator Pavley to more formally adjourn in her memory.
Senator Pavley.
Yes, thank you very much, Senator Pro Tem Steinberg. I would like to rise in memory of Eunice Shriver. Two of her 5 children live in my district, not only Maria Shriver in Brentwood, but Bobby Shriver, who's on the Santa Monica City Council. And in the Pavley household, the Shrivers have been people that we respect so highly. My husband, some of you might know, was in the Peace Corps with Kennedy's call to service. And as many of you know, we have a child that's developmentally disabled. And Eunice Shriver's appeal to so many families who have children who are intellectually challenged has opened up new pathways and opportunities and respect and dignity in so many lives. And so she touches many of our hearts. And I'd like to end with a statement from the Kennedy family at the funeral that occurred just last week. It says, "Inspired by her love of God, her devotion to her family, and her relentless belief in the dignity and worth of every human life, she worked without ceasing, searching, pushing, demanding, hoping for change. She was a living prayer, a living advocate, a living center of power. She set out to change the world and to change us, and she did that and more. She founded the movement that became the Special Olympics, the largest movement for acceptance and inclusion for people with intellectual disabilities in the history of the world. Her work transformed the lives of hundreds of millions of people across the globe, and they, in turn, are her living legacy. Please join me in sending our thoughts and prayers to the First Lady, Arnold Schwarzenegger, as well as her brother, Bobby Shriver, who lives in Santa Monica, along with their family.
Thank you, Senator Pavley. Senator Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Mr. President. I, too, would like to add the voice of our caucus to the motion to adjourn in memory for Eunice Shriver. And reading about her life and the way she actually changed our country and changed our culture, and never having served in office, was a very impactful thing to me, and also I think something that we should celebrate about her life. When you look back 50 years ago, when she began talking about the need for our culture, our country, to value everyone, those with mental disabilities or mental impairments, at that time it was very different. Someone who had a mental disability wasn't necessarily valued in a family even, that it was looked at by our culture, our society, as something to hide. And through her work and through her actions throughout that time period, we now have a very different culture. And we need to recognize that and recognize the tremendous contribution that she made with her efforts to our country. And I think it's very important to note that today, where a huge change occurred because of that passion, because of that work, where now, and her work on behalf of people with disabilities, to point out that everyone has value in this society. She worked for everyone to have a value within a family and within our culture, whether unborn or mental disabilities or aged or other disabilities. And so it is with that recognition and celebration that we extend our condolences to the First Family and to the Shriver and the Kennedy families, that our prayers are with them at this time.
Thank you, Senator Hollingsworth and Senator Pavley and Senator Steinberg. Members, any other items in terms of privileges of the floor? Senator Simitian.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to remove AB 737 from the inactive file. It's file item A20.
Without objection.
Thank you. And, Mr. President, I'd also like to move AB 572, Assemblymember Brownlee's legislation. It's file item 191 to the inactive file at the request of the author.
Without objection. Thank you, Senator Simitian. Senator Anastat.
For purposes of introduction. Okay. Mr. President, members, I'd like to introduce to you somebody who's been my friend for 53 years. We met as two little fifth graders playing baseball, and we went to high school together, double dated together, went to college and became roommates together. He was in my wedding. We've communicated over the years, see each other frequently, and on vacation I was back there thinking about driving back alone to California from Wisconsin, and he said, "I'll ride with you." And so even after 53 years, we spent the last 4 days in the car, and we still haven't had a fight. I'd like you to introduce to you my best friend, whose last name starts with A-A-M, so he was always ahead of me, even in high school, Dean Ahmet.
Senator Simitian.
President, I'd just like to ask Mr. Ahmet if he'd stick around and share some stories with us before he vacates the Capitol today.
Senator Benoit.
Thank you. For the purpose of introduction, I'd just like to mention that I have with me a special guest, my nephew, Perry, 12 years old, going on 15 or 20. Great kid. Glad he could come up and join me.
Welcome to the Senate. Members, any other items under privileges of the floor? Seeing and hearing none, we do have a consent calendar. Will the clerk please read the item?
Assembly Bill 1463 by Assemblymember Smith, an act relating to high school graduation.
Members, we need to actually call the roll on this. Will the Secretary please call the roll? And we will also add special consent to this item as well, which are items 273 through 303 without objection. Seeing, hearing none. Okay, will the Secretary please call the roll on the consent and the special consent calendar?
Onnested? Aye. Alquist? Aye. Ashburn? Benoit? Aye. Calderon? Aye. Cedillo? Aye. Cogdill? Aye. Corbett? Correa? Aye. Cox? Denham? Aye. Dusanier? Aye. Ducheney? Dutton? Aye. Flores? Aye. Hancock? Aye. Harmon? Aye. Hollingsworth? Aye. Huff? Aye. Kehoe? Aye. Leno? Aye. Liu? Aye. Lowenthal? Aye. Maldonado? Negrete McLeod? Aye. Oropesa? Padilla? Aye. Pavley? Aye. Price? Aye. Romero? Runner? Aye. Smidian? Aye. Steinberg? Aye. Strickland? Aye. Walters? Aye. Wiggins? Aye. Wolk? Aye. Wright? Wyland? Aye. Yee? Yee, aye. Ashburn, aye. Corbett, aye. Cox, aye.
Ayes 35, noes 0. The consent and the special consent calendars are approved. Seeing no other business, Senator Steinberg, the desk is clear.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I want to welcome everybody back. Hope everyone got some rest, deserved, but also needed, because the next 4 weeks, I anticipate, are going to be a flurry of activity. We have a lot of items on our agenda, and I look forward to ending this session on a positive and productive note. So in that light, we'll have an all-night session tonight, beginning at... Just kidding. We have check-in session tomorrow, check-in session Wednesday, floor at 9 o'clock on Thursday. For the Democrats, I'd like to have 2 caucuses, one tomorrow at noon and one Wednesday at noon. All right? Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Steinberg. The Senate will now be in recess till 3:30, with which time the adjournment motion will be made. Senator Steinberg.
And I just misspoke a little bit. Wednesday at noon will be the caucus, and we will find another hour other than Tuesday at noon for a second hour. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Steinberg. Democratic caucus Wednesday at noon. Members, the Senate will recess. We will the adjournment motion will be made at 3:30, at which time we will reconvene, as Senator Steinberg said, on Thursday at 9 a.m. The Senate is adjourned.